I have prepared remarks. I want to begin tonight with a truth that should not need saying, yet here we are. Justice is not blind. Justice has eyes. And every one of those eyes is watching this board of trustees. This is not a small moment. This is not a procedural meeting. This is a reckoning point for a public institution that has served this region for 75 years. And I will not stand by quietly while 3 members of this board attempt to drag us backwards into ignorance, fear, and the soft-spoken violence of white fragility disguised as concern. For those who don't know me, my name is Mary Williams, a trustee serving one of 2 seats for the city of Vancouver. And I am here tonight with the community, not above it and not instead of it. I am here to speak the truth out loud so our neighbors could finally see what has been happening in plain sight. I hold a Master of Science in Information from the University of Michigan, the so-called Harvard of library schools, though we Wolverines prefer to say Harvard is the Michigan of the East. I built my career as the first digital archivist for Disney Animation. I ran technology and collections for a special district library in Austin, Texas. I have been a consultant for major tech companies, and now I run a thriving media studio right here in Vancouver. In other words, I know what I'm looking at, and I know what I'm hearing, and I know when something is rotten inside a governing body. I am half Asian, I am queer, and I have lived my life as someone who can sometimes pass in white and heteronormative spaces, which means I see things that others pretend not to see. I hear what is whispered when people think they are safe inside their sameness. I recognize the tone, the posture, the microaggressions that stack like paper cuts until the wound becomes a hemorrhage. And make no mistake, the hemorrhage is here. Because what is happening on this board is not a disagreement. It is not a misunderstanding. It is not just a conversation. It is an attempted whitewashing of our district's mission, vision, strategic plan, and values. It is an effort to strip the words equity and intellectual freedom from a document that represents the soul of a public library, this public library. It is the same playbook being used across the country to push marginalized communities out of public life, one concern at a time. And I will name that playbook clearly: white fragility. White fragility is the reflex to shut down accountability the moment someone names harm. It is the defensiveness that erupts when a person's worldview is challenged. It is the shaking voice, the forced smile, the faux neutrality, the performative confusion. It is the "I'm just asking questions" routine that masks a deep fear of losing dominance. And it has been infecting this board for months. You appeal to God to justify oppression. I am appealing to God to remind you, justice has eyes, and every single one of them is open tonight, because this is not about politics. This is not about neutrality. This is not about budgets or process or semantics. This is about power. Who has it? Who is afraid of losing it? And who is willing to weaponize ignorance to keep it? I am not here to whisper. I am not here to smooth your egos. I am here to speak plainly, directly, and with the full weight of my lived experience and professional expertise. The public deserves to know exactly what has been happening, and tonight you will. Before we go any further, we must name the truth plainly, because silence is how rot spreads, and light is how we disinfect a system. Tonight, we shine a light on the 7 trustees on this board. 6 of them are white women, and 3 of them, Christy Morgan, Olga Hodges, and Marie Coffey, have spent the last 9 months waging a coordinated conservative campaign against the district's strategic plan, against equity, against intellectual freedom, and against the professionals hired to do this work. And tonight, we are going to tell the truth about what they have done. Let us start with the basics. Every single member of this board has had access for months to the strategic planning process, the community surveys, the presentations, the advisory committees, and the data collected from thousands of your neighbors. All of it public, all of it transparent, all of it delivered by experts from Point North Consulting and Group 4 Architecture, firms with decades of experience in research, design, planning, and civic engagement. But instead of listening, instead of learning, instead of doing their due diligence as trustees, these three women have shown us again and again what happens when personal insecurity meets public authority. They questioned the legitimacy of your community feedback. They challenged the professional expertise of architects, researchers, technologists, and librarians. They misunderstood their role as trustees and attempted to substitute their personal discomfort for process and data. And when the evidence did not confirm their worldview, they escalated. They began looking for angles, loopholes, semantics, anything they could twist into a justification for their resistance. This is how white fragility behaves in governance, not with slurs, not with burning crosses, but with obstruction disguised as oversight, with doubt disguised as prudence, with delay disguised as inquiry, with politeness used as a shield for control. But it didn't stop there, because white fragility rarely stays micro. At our August meeting in Goldendale, the consultants presented a comprehensive snapshot of the community feedback. And what did we witness? Christy Morgan fishing for data points that validated her personal opinion, not data that reflected the community, not trends, not patterns, but confirmation bias, masquerading as stewardship. And while she was doing that, Olga Hodges questioned the use of Post-it notes, a foundational tool of user-centered design, revealing a stunning lack of understanding of the very processes she claims to evaluate. Let me pause here because this part matters. The Post-it note is not a toy. It is not a decoration. It is a globally recognized technique for affinity mapping, used by UX designers, researchers, engineers, architects, and consultants across every major industry. Zoom uses it, Disney uses it, tech startups use it, libraries use it, and this district used it because it works. But ignorance speaks loudly when confidence is misplaced. And when white fragility meets unfamiliar methodology, the first instinct is to undermine what they do not understand. This pattern continued. Olga Hodges repeatedly refers to our executive director, Jennifer Giltrop, as Jen, a name she does not use, a name she has never used, a name Jennifer has politely corrected. This is not an accident. This is not harmless. This is not benign. This is a textbook microaggression. It is dominance disguised as familiarity. It is the erasure of identity through casual disrespect. It is the first step in coercion. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But the macro came soon after. At our November meeting, Christy Morgan launched a public attack on the concept of equity itself, claiming the word was not neutral enough. Then she targeted the budget for the consultants, implying misuse, despite months of documentation, presentations, and transparent accounting. This is not oversight. This is obstruction. This is white fragility with a microphone. And behind closed doors in meetings the public does not attend, Marie Coffey added her own contribution, telling the consulting team and the advisory committee, we need to make sure we are getting our money's worth, as if the work presented for 9 months had not been thorough, professional, or valid, as if the expertise in the room needed her permission to be credible, as if the community's voice, thousands of voices, your voices, was not enough. Here is the truth they do not want spoken aloud. They do not question the process because the process is flawed. They question the process because the process did not give them the world they wanted. They do not want equity. They do not want inclusive language. They do not want community voice. They want comfort. They want control. They want the illusion of neutrality that protects their status quo. And when the data reflected a district that is diverse, changing, multi-ethnic, multilingual, LGBTQ+, economically varied, intellectually curious, and proud of it, they panicked. because the district does not look like them. And so they try to change the plan instead of changing themselves. Make no mistake, white fragility is currently infecting this board of trustees, and infection spreads when it is not treated. So tonight, the treatment begins. I want to tell you a story that every librarian knows, a story that every trustee is supposed to understand, a story about what happens when you betray the most sacred principle of public libraries, the right of every person to access information without judgment. Years ago, when I was a reference librarian, a woman approached my desk asking for help placing an interlibrary loan request. For those unfamiliar, this is when a library borrows a book from somewhere else in the world because it isn't held in the local collection. The book she wanted was Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler's autobiography. Now, in a world governed by fear or fragility, a librarian might recoil. A librarian might judge. A librarian might say, why on earth would you want that? But that is not what librarians do. Our job is not to police curiosity. Our job is not to gatekeep difficult material. Our job is not to determine who deserves access and who does not. Our job is to uphold the principle of intellectual freedom, not when it's easy, not when it's comfortable, but especially when it is not. So I ordered the book without hesitation, without judgment, without projecting fear onto a patron who simply wanted to understand the forces that collapse democracies. As I searched the global catalog, the woman grew visibly uncomfortable. She finally whispered that she felt she needed to explain why she wanted the book. I told her, "You never owe me an explanation for your curiosity." She exhaled with relief and told me she was reading through a list of historically significant works to understand how fascism takes root in a society, how everyday people become complicit, how democracies erode, how freedoms crumble one principle at a time. That moment in librarianship taught me something essential. Democracy doesn't die in sweeping gestures. Democracy dies in quiet erosions, in small compromises, in semantic edits, in the removal of a word like equity because it makes someone uncomfortable. If you erase the word equity, you erase the mechanism that ensures every patron can use their library. If you erase intellectual freedom, you erase the obligation to protect access for all. Not just the comfortable, not just the majority, not just the homogeneous few. And if you do that in a library, you might as well turn the lights off and chain the doors shut, because a library without equity or intellectual freedom is not a library. It is a vending machine for the dominant class. This is not theoretical. This is not abstract. We are watching it happen in real time across the country. And now it is happening here. When you swap terms like equitable access for individual access, you are not neutral. You are not simplifying. You are not depoliticizing. You are dismantling the very principle that ensures a queer teen can check out a book safely. An immigrant can learn English without shame. A homeless neighbor can use a computer. A disabled patron can attend a board meeting through Zoom. A patron of any political belief can research whatever they wish. Equity is not a buzzword. Equity is the scaffolding of a functioning democracy. When you remove it, the collapse has already begun. So when trustees say, is this word too political? Is this word concept too divisive? Is this phrase too progressive? I ask you, divisive to whom? Political for whom? Uncomfortable for whom? Because the pattern is clear. People who have always been centered feel attacked the moment they are asked to share the center. And that discomfort, that white fragility, becomes the justification for rolling back the rights of everyone else. This is how communities lose their freedoms, not all at once, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, procedurally, politely, strategically, through edits, omissions, redefinitions, and concerns that pretend to be neutral. And one day you wake up and ask, how did we get here? I'll tell you how. You lost your democracy in meetings exactly like this one. So what does a community do when democracy is being nibbled to death by polite, performative, just asking questions fragility? What do we do when three trustees, Christy Morgan, Olga Hodges, and Marie Coffey, mistake personal discomfort for public duty? What do we do when the loudest voices in the room are the ones trying to shrink the world instead of expanding it? We get loud. We get louder than the whisper campaigns, louder than the coded language, louder than the microaggressions stacked like sandbags against progress, louder than the fear pretending to be neutrality, louder than the fragility clogging up the gears of this board. This district is bigger than them. This district is more diverse than them. This district is braver than them. Our consultants have shown us who we really are over the last 9 months. We are a district full of Black, Brown, Asian, Pacific Islander, Indigenous, queer, immigrant, refugee, disabled, working class, creativity-rich, multilingual human beings who believe in the radical idea that everyone deserves access to knowledge. And guess who else believes that? The staff. Nearly 100% of library employees participated in the strategic planning process, an unheard of number in civic research, and they overwhelmingly affirmed equity and intellectual freedom as the values they stand behind. The people doing the work, they understand what the work is. But the trustees resisting this plan, they are insulting the staff, undermining the process, disrespecting the experts, and misrepresenting you, the community that voted for a levy lid lift by a massive margin because you already told us who you want to become. So if you're sitting here tonight wondering, what can I do? Oh God, how do I help? What difference can I make? Let me tell you exactly what you do. You show up. You keep showing up. You attend the meetings. You watch the recordings. You bring a friend next time. You write to trustees at FVRL.org. You tell them what this district actually values. You tell them you see what is happening. You tell them you will not allow fragility to drown out democracy. You do not need permission to defend your library. You do not need credentials to demand equity. You do not need to be a librarian to know oppression when you see it. They are loud because they are few. You are quiet because you are many. And tonight, the silence ends. Because when a community speaks with one voice, there isn't a board in this country that can withstand it. There are members of this board, and everyone here knows exactly who they are, who have been clinging to the illusion that their personal discomfort should shape your public policy. They wrap it in politeness. They wrap it in procedure. They wrap it in a thin veil of concern. But peel back the wrapping, and what you find is the same thing that has threatened marginalized communities for generations.